Hello, everyone, and most welcome to 1703, or if you prefer, 1703. And we will continue the article by Roland Boer, Revelation and Revolution. Friedrich Engels and the Apocalypse. And we've been discussing earlier contradictions, polarities, and how they are important to have one-sidedness. There will be no goodness of Christ if the opposition doesn't exist. But in contrast to, let's say, everyday thinking, opposition doesn't lead to a diminishing of either side. And the DCCT coin is a good example of that. The fullness of one side of Caesar Flavius Divus doesn't diminish the imperial other side. It would be ridiculous to claim anything like that. There is a certain enforcing with oppositions, making good possible. Otherwise, as Rudolf Cachet would have it, we become nullified. Nullified is absolute, unstructured, chaotic, anything goes view. And I will continue where we left off the former lecture, which was 1700b. And it's the last little bit of paragraph down at the page, almost at the very bottom. As for Engels, so this is where I will continue. As for Engels' long-standing interest in revelation, these later studies seem like a complete turnaround. Once he took up and often mocked the speculation concerning the last judgment, but now revelation is useful to provide a glimpse into the earliest forms of Christianity. As he puts it at the close of his essay on revelation, all this has now lost its interest, except for ignorant persons who may still try to calculate the day of the last judgment. Engels might no longer estimate the day of judgment, but he certainly has not lost his interest. There's also something deeply reformed about this exercise. Luther and Calvin claim to be restoring the purity of the early church from its corruption and accretion of apparently pagan elements. It is as though Engels is saying, if you really want to recover the early church, here it is. The details of Engels' reconstruction might not have grabbed the imagination, but there is one item in all these essays that remains very much part of current debate. The appeal of Christianity to the lower classes, especially slaves. The argument actually undergoes a shift across the three essays. In the first essay, Engels takes it directly from Boer, who argued that a part of Christianity's appeal lay in its reversal. For it despised wealth, power, and privilege, seeking disciples among the rejected, the poor, and slaves. The catch is that the religion that made such an appeal was for Boer the full-fledged form of Christianity, with all of its borrowed and blended pieces from Philo and Stoicism. By contrast, when we get to the essay on Revelation, Engels shifts ground, arguing that this appeal to the lower classes was actually a feature of earliest Christianity, before all the accretions. In other words, it is what he finds in the picture depicted by Revelation he would hold the same line in the third essay. Christianity was originally a movement of oppressed people. It first appeared as the religion of slaves and freedmen, of poor people deprived of all rights, of peoples subjugated or dispersed by Rome. Apart from a few general comments about the effect of Roman imperialism, which he argues crushed older social structures of clan and polis, imposed a new juridical system, exacted punishing tribute, and exacerbated the hopeless state of the vast majority of slaves in impoverished peasants and desperate urban freemen. Engels gives relatively scant attention to the details of this crucial point. Nevertheless, it is the point that has stuck. In fact, Engels is also the source of the idea in New Testament studies and church history, especially in terms of class analysis, rather than the dominance of such ideas of ideas such as despising the rich, mediated and elaborated by Luxemburg and Kautsky. This position became by the early 20th century the consensus among New Testament scholars and among sociologists, holding sway until the 1960s. Then, however, reaction set in, and more conservative scholars reclaim the older argument that predates Engels. Christianity also drew its membership, albeit a minority, from the middle and upper strata of Roman society. The problem with either position is that there is no conclusive evidence, not an uncommon problem in biblical criticism. So how does Engels get to the position that the early Christianity of revelation appealed to the lower classes? He cannot rely on direct evidence, since there is very little outside the notoriously unreliable documents from the time. Nor does he draw on any other literature, mainly because it is his own proposal. It comes from an audacious exercise in comparison. As in his essay on the peasant revolt, Engels sets out to show that early Christianity and the communist movement have multiple parallels. both appeal to the oppressed classes, both suffer from sectarian squabbles and endless splits. They have countless false prophets who arise and lead people astray. They suffer from a tension between ascetic self-denial and libertinism. They also suffer from persecution and ostracism. And they both hope for a better world that keeps them struggling despite numerous setbacks. Indeed, Engels and Marx were given to making such comparisons, often in relation to various opponents and sectarian tendencies in the communist movement. There are myriad comments in this vein scattered through their works on Proudhon, Bakunin, Mazzini, and many others. As Marx put it in a comment on La Salle, in fact, every sect is religious. This comparative exercise is the underlying theme of Engels' essay on early Christianity. For example, just as the author Paul of the second letter to the Corinthians complains that contributions are not coming in, so also with the international. How many of the most zealous propagandists of the 60s would squeeze the hand of the author that epistle, whoever he may be, and whisper, "So it was like that with you too." When Engels turns to Revelation, he picks up the fictional letters to the seven churches in its opening chapters as evidence of sectarian splits. So also with the workers' movement, with its warring factions of Weitling communists, Proudhonists, Blanquists, the German Workers' Party, and the Bakunists. Revelation shows us that such splits are but the sign of an immature revolutionary movement, and on they go. There are simply too many parallels for Engels to avoid the inevitable conclusion that Christianity was originally a revolutionary movement. As he puts it succinctly in a text written about the same time, at the turn of the year 1895, it is now almost to the year 16 centuries since a dangerous party of overthrow was likely active in the Roman Empire. It undermined religion and all the foundations of the state, and flatly denied that Caesar's will was the supreme law. It was without a fatherland, was international. It spread over the whole empire, from Gaul to Asia and beyond the frontiers of the empire. It had long carried out seditious activities underground in secret. For a considerable time, however, it had felt strong enough to come out into the open. This party of overthrow, which was known by the name of Christians. incomparable oppressive economic situations in which class conflict was rife, both movements sprang up not because of great leaders or prophets, but because of the masses. No wonder then that the revolutionary movements before the socialists arrived on the scene were invariably Christian, at least if one restricts the same pool to Europe. The sample pool to Europe, thanks. At least if one restricts the sample pool to Europe. I think it could be a good stop here. 1703. Let's have a look, see here. Did saw some interesting potential quotes here. And if anybody wonders, of course, I haven't missed out on the mentioning on Lutherans and Calvinists. That is an obvious quote, no doubt. Let's start there and see where we go. The want for purity, also important. Oh, so important indeed. Luther and Calvin claim to be restoring the purity of the early church from its corruption and accretion of apparently pagan elements. This cleansing procedure is uniquely, to put it into a geographical and cultural perspective, it's Western and it's modern. It is also technological thinking, as I call it, going to a pure starting point. The Big Bang of Christianity. If you find the purity, it is definitely in the early church. Or why not go directly to Jesus or before him? As pure, original, clean, platonic as humanly possible. And this is, of course, not restricted only to Lutheranism and Calvinism. We have the Reformed Church, we have to a certain extent the Anglican Church. So there are many examples of this tendency. And well, why not take Marxism itself? Also there, it came to be a large question, especially in the 20th century. Who held, oh God, what is that? Who held the purest Marxism? Whether it was Chairman Mao, Stalin, or Enver Hoxha, the purity was important, and it led to chiasms almost similar to the one that happened to Christianity. There was a big chiasm within Marxism, and also involving Engels, no doubt, between the Eastern and Western, if you like, varieties of Christianity / Marxism. And Marxism looked for purity as well, the original. And we know today this has eroded the Christian church. It's a strange foreign element, and it's very, very Western also to mix religions. This is frowned upon in the East. They would like to keep it, not purity by this almost ludicrous word games, but true purity as true of heart, true, to use a Wittgensteinian term, in the actual use, not in some use that never ever happened. Because we never find out original in this way by looking for the first one, going somewhere else to have evidence. It simply is never done, so it's a misuse of language. There is an interesting quote further down from Engels himself. It's about 25 lines down. Christianity, yeah, you put the Christianity was, just missed it, a bit up. Christian, well, if you go up a bit there, you're too far down. You need to go up. Up. Sentence begins with Christianity, yeah. And here we have once more the truer, the more fairer is to have a movement of Christianity, of oppressed people. It first appeared as the religion of slaves and freedmen, of poor people deprived of all rights, of peoples subjugated or dispersed by Rome. And once more we have this tendency of finding the origin. In this particular sentence, the origin is the paupers, the poor, the proletarians. They are purer, almost like the wild man of Rousseau. They're not affected by money, wealth, luxury. And for them, the kingdom of heaven is open, also in the view of Engels. The purity thing is still working here in a very interesting way. So in a way, modern Christianity, Platonism, modern religion, and Marxism slash the Engelian take on Marxism are very close. They equal each other. And I do even remember when I was young, I saw a TV program on Channel 2, as we used to have in the 70s, early 80s in Sweden, which was more in the line of Engels. And they depicted Jesus as he was a good man because he was a revolutionary for the poor people. And taking away his double take, like polarity, was, in this case, he was only good in some way. And therefore, there were no heavenly tendencies. I think they concluded the whole story with that was suffused with animations and some music with the phrase that after Jesus died, many similes and metaphors were put to him as he could perform miracles, sort of indicating that he never could. So those tendencies are incredibly clearly exposed here in the text. And I also realized this wouldn't be possible if, for instance, Jacques Derrida in the previous reads would have chosen Jacques Monod instead of Francois Jacob. It's not as clear in Monod. He mixes the things, he's not succinct. But Engels is definitely succinct, and especially in this read, I do like it. I'm just going to put a point where we ended here, which I hopefully did. Yes. Maybe some comments, Kalle? Please go ahead.
Yes, let me comment on your comment, Hans. I think it's useful about the purity. I was thinking about something that you have Revelation chapter 1. Let me see. There is the John describes Jesus. Let me see. Okay, this is a description of Jesus in verse 14. His head and his hairs were white like wool, as white as snow. So why I'm taking up this verse 14a is the idea of purity. Usually we associate whiteness with purity. And the idea that Jesus has white hair, here you have actually a synthesis, you could say, that the son Jesus is like his father. They both have white hair. So you have here, this is an idea of that strengthens the idea that Trinity was already here in the book of Revelation, but also most importantly is the idea of the hair.
Oh, yeah.
Is and why is this interesting? Okay, so whiteness is usually purity. That is when something is young, like a newly born sheep. But here you have white is also symbolizing old age, since it's in context of hair. So purity is not only about the origin. Origin would only be the usefulness. You have the purity in the beginning of Christianity, supposedly. But you could use this verse also to show that there is purity also in development,
Yes.
like in the white hair. Would you agree, Hans? Or
Yeah, I like it. And we often see the elderly as being pure, almost like children, but of course in another way. But it's this purity of the elder. Yeah, it rings true to me. Very good.
And then the other quotation that you mentioned was this. Yes. So this second quotation from Engels that you mentioned, that it was original movement of oppressed people. And I will compare it with Revelation chapter 3 that we see here. It's about to the church in Sardis, in Lydia, the king of Lydia, the former king of Lydia, where you had the king Croesus. Okay, so it's about the garments they walk with me white, but it's not that I wanted to mention. It's verse 17. This is he's speaking to Philadelphia, church in Philadelphia. And here, verse 17, because thou sayest, I'm rich and increased with goods, have need of nothing, and knowest not that thou art wretched and miserable and poor and blind and naked.
Yeah.
So they say that, excuse me, it's actually the church of Laodiceans in this case. So Jesus is reproaching that Laodiceans, they think they are rich, that is wealthy goods, but instead they are naked in Jesus' eyes. Spiritually naked, of course.
Wow.
So this demolishes Engels.
Yeah. Well, demolishing or being another interesting contradiction. Yeah, I like it. Yeah, definitely. Lovely.
This 18, I counsel thee to buy of me gold tried in the fire. So this is the right, the proper wealth according to Jesus. So this is Laodiceans, one of the 7 cities of the book of Apocalypse. All these churches are today in modern day Turkey, close to each other. Laodiceans were materially wealthy.
Come again? They were
Materially wealthy.
okay.
Laodiceans, apparently. So Jesus is reproaching his congregation or praising. He also praises some congregations. So.
Well, most interesting.
So let me. I think. Do you? I don't know if you want to add something, or should we stop there?
It was a very interesting text. It's ripe with contradictions. They come up very clear and they enforce each other, and it makes a stronger case, I would say. But I think it's so interesting how Marxism equals Christianity. We had a chiasm, a cleft between the East and the West Church. And the same happened to communism, Marxism. Which had the purest Marxism? Was it Stalin or the Soviet Union, or was it China, the Eastern Church of Marxism?
Yes, who was the rightful Pope, Stalin or Mao?
Yeah. And it became a very decisive cleft in there. They hated each other in the end, didn't have any contact. So there is a great simile there. Why I say in that case, thank you very much for participating, Kalle.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for listening in, watching. Have a pleasant morning, day, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are. Bye bye for now.
Thank you.